We are live! Can you believe it, everyone? Oh, okay. Looks like we've got about 5 minutes here before we start going. Just a little. We are live! Can you believe it, everyone? All right, so we've got about a minute of delay, I guess. But we are here, we are going, and that's me. Hi, everyone. Just waiting for some folks to show up. Unfortunately, I'm locked out of the Zoom account, so no voice chat. Hey, Jordan, how's it going? Jordan Downey in all the way from beautiful Vancouver. And yeah, welcome everybody. We've got 7 already in the room, and we've still got 4 minutes until showtime at least. Just want to acknowledge before we start here that we broadcast from Nakusp, BC in the beautiful Aero Lakes. I am Kyle Kusch, the archive technician here at the Arrowhistoricalsociety. It's important to acknowledge that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Nakusp people. Before we get started, I just want to give another shout out to our books. Hi, Steph. How's it going? We have 2 brand new portable histories that came out in August, and of course, with COVID, most of you haven't been able to get down to the office. Some of you that live here in Nakusp have been able to find them in Merit Cell Books or in other retailers around the West Kootenay. But they are great little portable historical driving tours of the Aero Lakes. One is a tour going from Nakusp to Trout Lake, including Beaton and Galena Bay and Halcyon. The other is a tour book that takes you south towards Burton, Edgewood, Fauquier. Both are, one's 40 pages, one's 48 pages. They're just $10. They're a great historical guide. And we do have a 3rd book coming up sometime early next year, and it will actually be stories of the Nakusp Hot Springs. Can you believe that there's never been a book published about Nakusp Hot Springs? Well, there will be now. Our ace researcher, Kathy Froese, is working on that one. In fact, she's actually going to be doing some more on it this weekend. We just had our first ever virtual annual general meeting last week, and I was happy to see lots of people from around the province joining us from all sorts of places. It actually allows more people to show up than normally would, and we've got another great roster of directors for the next 2 years, so we're very excited about them. Also, they will be arriving next week, but I'm pretty excited about this. As you know, the Ueda family estate has been going sorted through for the past few months. And the Ueda family just has such an amazing, inspirational story from New Westminster to internment to Nakusp, and their ups and downs and their struggles and their ultimate triumphs. And one of the amazing things that we found were dozens and dozens and dozens of Super 8 films and 16mm films in their collection. So, and those have just been digitized, and I believe we will be receiving the hard drive with all of these films dating from the 1950s right up until the present day. Not just Nakusp, Nelson, Spokane, but all the way over to Japan as well. It's going to be amazing footage. I'm really excited to see it. and maybe that might have to be another show that we put on for you, because I'm sure it's going to be amazing. We've already seen, I can tell you, just having briefly gone through the collection, there's some amazing artifacts. And a lot of those will actually be going to the National Nikkei Museum in Burnaby. Some very, very important stuff. And when we're finished here tonight, I will maybe be doing a little survey as to what you might want to see in our next show. But for now, tonight, we honor another remarkable Japanese-Canadian story that is intimately tied to Nakusp, and that is that of Ichiro Shiino, who would have been 105 this year. For those who don't know, as as our landlord walks in. Yeah, so just so you know, we're obviously not at the Aero Lakes Archives. We are, thanks to one of our awesome volunteers, Ron Niemeyer, we are at Dragon Da Vinci Studio here in downtown Nakusp, and it's the only streaming location of its kind in the entire village. We're so grateful to have access to this wonderful facility, and when I see you in the chat, it looks like we've got about a 50-second delay or so. But I'm ecstatic to be using this, and this for now will be until such time. I believe it'll be. I believe they just delayed it to 2023 when we'll actually be getting high-speed internet for our building. So until then, this will be your home, and what a wonderful place it is. And so tonight we honor one of our most beloved characters in Nakusp, a real sweetheart of a guy, if he was. He came here from Cumberland on the island. He was removed to the internment camp at Lemon Creek, south of Slocan City. And from there, he caught on with Big Bend Lumber Company, which became Selgar. And that's where he spent most of his adult life, working on the tugs up and down the Aero Lakes and up the Columbia River for Selgar. And not only was he a dedicated forest worker, he was also the town's preeminent photographer, videographer, weddings, graduations, parades, you name it. And he left behind thousands and thousands of photographs and drawings, and as you're going to watch quite imminently, some amazing footage. We have enough footage for 2 shows. That's why this is Ichiro Shiino Movie Night Part 1. So we've got about 75 minutes of footage tonight, and next time we do an Ichi show, it'll be another 75 minutes. Some of you may have seen some of this footage on the Ichi 100 DVD that we put out 5 years ago, but a lot of this footage is never before seen as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go. And, oops. Movie. Okay, where am I here? There we go. And as you can see, we're starting off with some, this would not be proper forestry practice in the modern day. But these are actual Selgar employees, Ichi's co-workers on the tug, feeding a little bear cub at Vipon Creek, which is directly across the lake from Nakusp, on your way to what people call the Bahamas now. But this is the point before that, so almost directly across the lake from Nakusp. And apparently this was a pretty regular occurrence. They got to know this little guy pretty well. I cannot believe that no one got their fingers chomped off or their hands chomped off. But if you go to our website, alhs-archives.com, you can actually see a whole set of photos from this photo session, impromptu photo session as well. It's absolutely... Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Fines coming. Indeed. Oh, there goes the milk. Or was that the cream? I can't tell. That is the Kuskonax Creek Bridge. So, before Highway 23, when the Canyon Road over Kuskonax Creek ended about a mile north of town. We didn't get a logging road until the late 50s, and we didn't get an actual full highway out to Halcyon and Galena Bay until the end of the 60s. This is what the bridge looked like between 1940 and 1967 or thereabout. You're going to see some pretty cool little redfish here. Spawning. And of course, those are kokanee. Yeah, that's amazing clarity on that video, by the way, for what is probably the late 1950s. Yeah, Kuskonax Creek, the lower end of it. I don't know if it still is. I'm not that much of a fish expert, but it was a pretty decent spawning ground for kokanee back in the day. Of course, this is before the dam. Of course, they can't really get past the canyon too much further than this because Kuskonax Creek is pretty rocky and filled with rapids, but imagine they can make some way upstream of this. I'm not totally sure. That is Dave Duncan's Aero Lakes Airways, which operated here between 52 and 62, thereabout. So again, this is probably late 1950s footage. So we actually did, yes, have a dedicated airline here, if you could call it that, in Nakusp. It was a seaplane, so he was docked at the old Selgar Wharf at just north of Rockwell Point. That is the Bluebird, named after its owner's business, the Bluebird Cafe. That's the name of that boat. You can probably see it on the edge of that boat. And these are just the different boats coming into the government wharf. And here's the biggest boat of them all, the MV Lardo. This was the boat that replaced the Minto, folks. A 10-car ferry that went from Arrowhead, Beaton, down to Galena Bay, and then down to Nakusp. A nice 6-hour boat ride. Definitely not the 25-minute, 85-car ferry we have at Shelter Bay, Galena Bay today. The wharf was located basically right at the foot of what is now 3rd Avenue. So if you were to go straight down to the lake from the Valley Food Store, that's about where the wharf was. And of course, after the dam, they moved it a couple blocks over. And yep, there's some water skis. The first water skis in the Cusp were actually wooden and handmade. So already in the 50s, just by the fact that you could buy water skis instead of having to make your own. That's that guy does a little hot dog in there. That's a great shot of the wharf, by the way. Really gives you an idea. And then there's the Bow Vista Motel, and we might get a glimpse of the Leland up in the top right corner there. There were actually 2 wharves, because there was the government wharf, and then there was the old CPR wharf right below where Save On Foods is now. Oh, there's Kim and Steve's house. You can see the Selgar, the Big Bend beehive burner in the back there. Oh, look at the chrome on that engine. That's fantastic. And you don't exactly have the steady cam in the late 50s here. But, yeah, I guess water skiing must have been a big novelty. If there's that many people on the wharf just to see somebody water skiing. But yeah, ooh, chrome. There we go. The brand newly paved highway at Box Lake. This is coming through Browse. On the way to Box Lake, you can see the highway, which is now the rail trail up on the left. There's Summit Peak, and then there's Box Lake with Three Sisters in the background. The campground at this time is on the west end of the lake. Today it's at the south end of the lake. Here's where you can see they are repaving the highway to finish this part of the paving for the first time. About 1964, I guess. That, I believe, is Nabiano. So for everyone my age, that would be Brody and Fergus and Satoshi and Kemi and Tia and Naomi's grandma. And yeah, just a great little scenic shot. There! Now we're into the late 60s, or... No, before that. That's Kinsman Park, which is now Summit Lake Provincial Park. So late 50s. And there's the diving tower. Yes, Summit Lake actually used to have a diving tower. I think it might have even had a diving tower still when I was a kid. I'm not quite sure. But a nice little picnic area there. That was definitely our picnic spot when we were little. It's funny, though. I've probably only been there maybe once in the past 20 or 30 years. It's been a long time since I've been to Summit Lake. I remember it being a bit colder than the main lake, obviously, because it's higher up. So this little boy is either going to be Rick Yano or Larry Yano. And I'm still trying to wonder what brand of soda is that, because it looks delicious. And a little sandwich, of course. It almost looks like a Donair. And of course that late 50s jacket, all the embroidery and the badges on it. And of course the fellow fisherman. And there's a catch. Oh, that's a big catch. That's 3. That's pretty good. Now, of course, the eternal mystery. Did he actually catch them, or the adults just getting the pose with him? We'll never know. Back on to Upper Arrow Lake. And that is... There we go. I believe this is the Aero Park Ferry. And you can tell it's quite narrow. There's a reason why there's an upper and a lower Arrow Lake, because there was about 25 kilometers separation between the two. So you had a very wide Columbia River, wide and shallow. There was only about 6... There was, before the dam, about 6 feet of elevation change. So not a whole lot. They actually had to dredge the narrows for boats to pass through, which of course is no longer an issue. But yeah, what a cool looking ferry. That would have been John Robbins, who was the ferryman, the ferry operator there. He did that for the first 30 years of the Aero Park Ferry. Not totally sure where this body of water is. And of course I wish I had a little bit of zoom for somebody to come and tell me who, but I don't. But like I said, Ichi worked for Big Bend Lumber, which became Seldar, and then later on, after his time, became Pope and Talbot, and that. But the size of those trees, you do not see that nowadays. And I'm just looking at that little tiny chainsaw compared to that mammoth tree. It would probably take 2 or 3 minutes to cut one down. So that's one thing you notice in old footage, how many more people they needed on hand. Obviously, for better or worse, forestry is a lot more efficient today. Oh my goodness, the size of that tree. Considering the size of the trees now, you may as well be walking through the middle of Stanley Park, given the size of those trees. My goodness. The blade doesn't even get around it. Ugh. Right, we've got 22 people watching. That's pretty amazing, and I know that there's some multiples too. We actually have a nice little socially distanced audience watching at the archives on the big screen. So, hi to everyone at the archives watching. Gwen, Sharon, Ken, Don. Yeah. Logging's dangerous enough now. I couldn't even fathom what it would be like in the back in the 50s. My goodness. Now, I wonder who these folks are. Chat, you're gonna, if you know, don't hesitate to type in if you know who any of those folks are. Of course, if I see the office or something, you can always just tell me there. But it's like I vaguely recognize some of those people, but I don't want to say for sure. And of course, yes, these are all silent films, obviously. Probably just as well. That is not what we would call a secure load by modern standards, by any means. A lot of these films I haven't watched since I put the Ichi 100 film together, and that was the end of 2014, beginning of 2015 when I did that, so these may as well be brand new to me. It's been a while since we've seen these. All these films would have came to the archives through the generosity of the Stanley family, who were kind enough to donate the artistic works from Ichi's estate. Oh, wow. There's some nice winter footage. Are you ready for winter, everyone? Are you ready for a COVID Christmas? Of course, logging doesn't stop in winter. Logging only stops after winter, once everything gets muddy and slushy. When it's the beginning of winter, as we see here in this footage, the mud's not so bad, so work continues. We're just hooking up some logs here. Yeah, those are about more of the types of logs I'm used to seeing nowadays. Second and third and fourth growth. And of course, everybody's got to pose for the camera. Oh, man. That guy about a minute ago driving the logging truck looked like Pete Townsend from The Who. I think one time we were watching that photo and somebody pointed out to me who that was. Yeah, exactly, Greg. Sound wasn't invented yet. It was, but it wasn't exactly portable. There's lots of old... there's a few hobbyists who collect not old Super 16mm film, but they actually collect old reel-to-reel tapes, and it'll just be the most random stuff, just people recording the radio, or, you know, Ed Sullivan broadcast back in 1957 or something. It's so weird, but it's... or just old family tapes from garage sales they picked up. That was Ron Jordan. He was the woods manager for Seldar. And he owned what was originally called the Edwards House. That was the big house overlooking Rothwell Point. And in 1968, they actually saved that house and moved it all the way into town. And it's now at the corner of 4th Street and 10th Ave. And so that house, even located in that part of town, is about 120 years old. And now, there's some real winter logging. You gotta drive your load down to the log dump on the lake. And if you're down below, you have to try not to get crushed by all these falling logs. And I think I remember in this film a couple of pretty close calls. But I love this shot. So this is, I think, coming down to the Nakusp waterfront. The original Highway 6 was located about 200 meters closer to shore. I want to say that's Bud Alton in the plaid jacket. He actually came to one of our shows once and saw himself in the film. So we grabbed a still shot of it and sent it to him. And if it's not him, then it's somebody else coming up. And J.R. Montgomery logging truck. Oh, God. Just standing there is all these... Okay, yeah. Back away is probably a good idea there, pal. Back away from the giant tire carriage. And then they gotta lower it in. And then you gotta turn around because the road's only one lane. And here comes... This is Marcoli? Yes. Henry Marcoli's logging truck. Marcolis are actually an old Bellevue family. If anybody knows where Bellevue is, that's it. That was located across the lake from Burton. So, very isolated. Only a couple dozen people at its maximum population. But there's Bud Alton there. That's it. But Bellevue is where the Marcolis came from, and it's where the Robertses came from. And, of course, this month it's the end of an era, as Marvin and Kathy have officially retired from Marvin's small motor repair. So that'll be a change for the town after 33 years. That big green building was the Selgar office, and that's still the same Selgar office that you see today. They actually moved it. There's Ron Jordan again. But, yeah, they actually moved this about a few hundred kilometers up the hill when the dam came. But still roughly in that same location on Rothwell Point. Didn't even break a window doing it. And of course, the Jordans are the first settler family of Nakusp. Ron's father, Frank, would have been the first store owner in Nakusp back in 1892. More seaplane action. And there's one of the green and white Selgar tugs. There used to be so many tugs up and down the lake. Just dozens and dozens and dozens of tugs. And of course I mentioned Ichi worked on those tugs for 40 years. And that's the Horn going by. A few years ago, Crosley Coates and Sean Coates actually took one of those old Selgar tugs, the Sitka, and restored it. And renamed it the MV Ichiro Shiino. So that's pretty cool. And that's you can actually drive by it on your way to the modern shipyard out on the Mill Road, 13th Avenue. You can actually see it as you head towards Galena Contracting there. Okay, I'm going to just do a little whoop. All right. I think we might get a Zoom chat going here, folks. Is it that seaplane looks incredibly beached among those logs. I don't know how they did that, but oh, okay, that looked like the nose was missing off of it. I'm wondering if that was the one that crashed in the bay in *64, which was a Selgar Norseman plane, or they just dry docked it on top of the logs in the middle of the water for some reason. I don't know. Somebody's better equipped to handle that question than I am. Oh, sorry about that. So, just some sighting, well, as we bunch the log, sighting action as we bunch the logs here. Don't worry, I'm sure there's a lot more than just logs. I think this is actually this section here is actually the longest video. A lot of the Japanese people in the Japanese Canadian community were actually valued for their logging experience. A lot came from Vancouver Island, where obviously forestry is pretty big. So last year, when the BC Historical Federation conference was in Courtney Comox, we actually got to take a tour of the now demolished Japanese community in Cumberland, and they've turned it into a quite a lovely memorial park, and lots of interpretive panels and guideposts to show you around and show you where everything in the community was located. And on one of the interpretive panels, I actually noticed that that they actually showed the suitcase that was issued to the Kiyono family, who of course wound up settling in Nakusp. I thought that was pretty poignant. There we go. That is the MV Aero 2. That is the old SS Beaton, repurposed as a tug, as an industrial tug, and it went up and down the lake. And as you can see, pushing some logging equipment on the barge. And in the background, you can see the Kuskenak's Point. There's another shot of the Aero number 1, and here it is coming into the old Saugar dry dock. Of course, now they are located a couple hundred meters down the road in Rothwell Bay, at Rothwell Point. And yeah, one thing you definitely do not see anymore on the Nakusp's waterfront is thousands and thousands of logs and log booms everywhere, and sawmills, and of course that was all cleaned up with the dam. There's a great shot of speaking of dam. Is this when they're actually constructing Keenly Side? Looks like they're doing a lot of sand fill there. That's what this looks like, doesn't it? Again, this is one I haven't seen in years, so I've forgotten what a lot of these are. So it's like living through this all over again, which is kind of neat to see all this stuff. But yeah, that sure looks like Castlegar to me. For those who missed our last show on, which was done over Zoom rather than YouTube, I actually got to travel down to Renata in June with some members from the ATV club, and yeah, got to drive right by the dam. I'd been to the dam by boat, but I'd never been up there actually driven up to it. So that was pretty neat. And I imagine that will be a slideshow that we do again sooner than later, just to show it properly, have it properly, have all that footage recorded properly on YouTube. Now, of course, this part of the film was upside down, but then it gets back into normalcy here, and where are we now? Well, guess what? We are about... Jordan, you're in the chat. This is probably about 10 blocks from your house, 12 blocks from your house. That was the PNE. And now we're downtown. I think this is actually not downtown. I think this might be Broadway in Vancouver. All these awesome neon signs from the 50s. I love it. It looks so cool. I think we actually see the Bomax sign coming up here, which is a designated historical landmark. But this is pretty awesome footage of Vancouver. There's the Bomax sign. Pretty awesome footage of all the neon that you used to have in Vancouver. O'Keefe. People still drank a lot of O'Keefe when I was a kid. You don't see that anymore. Caribou Trail Motel. With the H burned out. All right. We've got some parade footage here. So I'm guessing this is the PNE parade? And again, the amount of effort that went into these floats, that's the Seattle Seafair float, the amount of effort that goes into floats in big cities is just astounding. And of course, we've got lots more. Some of our best footage of Nakusp in the 50s and 60s is parade footage, as you'll see later and in part 2 when we get to that show. Gosh, Vancouver's changed so much. I couldn't actually tell you exactly where this was. I'm assuming this is downtown. But, Miss Royal City, and of course, we all know the Royal City is New Westminster. You have police officers on motorcycles, and 1886, so I'm guessing this is probably some sort, and then we got a 75, I think so. I'm guessing this might be 1956 or thereabout. Miss Powell River. So obviously everybody sending all their various pageant winners on floats, because most of these seem to be various pageant winners. Everett. Future home of the Silvertips. The Picture of Progress. Welcome to Everett, gateway to Century 21. Mount Lake Terrace. Man, lots of Washington floats coming up there. And the Penticton Beach Queen. And the Town Choir. The Little Squirt. Pipefitters Union. And a nuclear disarmament float. Okay, so even in the 50s, Vancouver's still Vancouver. Good to know some things don't change. Delta, the Tip Topper Club. So again, I just want to apologize for not having a voice chat going tonight, folks. I was kind of hoping that, because it's a movie night, there's lots of still footage, or lots of moving footage people could help narrate. It's a bit easier for me to talk and sort of fill in the gaps when it's just a regular slideshow. So if it's you sense an awkward pause here and there, I apologize. Is this Bouchard Gardens? Or it could be Queen Elizabeth Park. Oh, it could be Stanley Park, because there's some penguins. Stanley Park Zoo. And there's some big fowl. Of course, we've got our own poultry running around the Cusp these days. Now that we officially do have turkeys that have now migrated into town and are tying up traffic and all that fun stuff. Jordan asked, is that the Van Dusen Memorial Gardens before? It could be. Oh my god. Monkeys and seals. I still remember going to see the seals in the Vancouver Aquarium as a kid. Oh, okay. I guess this is a PG-13 stream now. And there's the Lionsgate Bridge, which only would have been about 20 years old in this footage. As we see a big ferry coming across. Because I think at this point the ferries were still landing downtown. And then still in Stanley Park, because here we are in Stanley Park Drive. And then all right. There we go. That is the old Tagum Bridge. So in between Tagum and Nelson. If you drive on the new bridge, you can still see the point jutting out into the river where the old bridge was. And there's Downtown Trail. That's the Kaminko Arena, which is still there. Notice how it said Highway 3A, not Highway 22 on that sign. And there's the Kaminko Smelter. Boy, does it sure look a lot greener now. And there's the Victoria Street Bridge. You really got to hand it to Trail. I actually find that Trail is turning into a pretty city in recent years. The trees have all returned to the sides of the hills, and you have all those cool houses and gardens and parks everywhere. I know that my mom always used to talk about Trail and how gray it was, and now it's now I really like walking through Trail. It's I did a nice socially distanced walk around Trail a few months ago. It was fantastic. And I think this is... I think we're going to get some Warfield Tunnel footage here. I think this is Rossland. That old Eaton store. And then, yeah, there's the trail. The tunnel, I mean, in between Trail and Warfield. And then more ferry. What ferry is this? Is this Castlegar Robson? If that is, then that was the ferry that was replaced by the Aero Park ferry. Or that was used to replace the Aero Park ferry, sorry. The one that they would have just pulled out of service. Got some benchlands here. I'm guessing if this is... Okay, yeah, that must have been Udashenya, because here's the Castlegar Airport. And Canadian Pacific Airways, which of course no longer exists, became part of Canadian Airlines, and then Air Canada bought that. But, yeah, Canadian Pacific was the way to go. But yeah, those, that little guy. So I'm guessing Ichi's here to welcome him to the airport, or... Now, of course, this is very rare footage in that the flight has not been cancelled due to fog or wind, being Castlegar. The Brilliant Dam. So, just north of Castlegar, heading back towards South Slocum. It's a bit bigger now. Another few generators were put on there in the early 2000s. My dad actually did some of the glass work on that. All right. Oh. Ooh. Okay. Yes, I should say that, yes, it is the 50s. Some of this is not going to be... totally appropriate, so be warned. This is historical footage. This would be New Denver. I think this film is New Denver night. Oh my god. Yikes. Sorry, everyone. This is New Denver, 1955. And of course, everybody's bikes are all decked out. Oh no! And then that was Barb Williams, who is now Barb Abbey. So there we go. May Parade. That's Boy Scouts. That's the Boy Scout float. That I own? I think that might be I own. So, yeah, this is okay. This is Nakusp. This is Nakusp. Because that, where these Queen candidates are sitting, that was the corner of Edith and Broadway, which is now 2nd and Broadway, right in front of where Nakusp Glass is now. And of course, this is downtown Nakusp. Here, Stafford Wells, Cold First. We just had an inquiry, I believe, from somebody in this chat about Staff Wells last week. So there we go. Staff Wells' coal truck. And of course, Wells Road in Glenbank is named after him. Even the wagons, just how much effort goes into just decorating little things like the wagons. Forests and forests of crepe paper. This would be right in front of what is now the general store. And then there's the... that would have been Canadian Girls in Training float. And then the 1955 May Queen float. And then... Oh, and there's the fire truck. And there's the old Anglican church. That is now where Kootenai Savings Credit Union is, and then you can see that brown building. That was a pool hall at the time. That is now What's Brewing on Broadway. And then, like all parades at the time, they ended inside the rec grounds on top of what is now Helen Zelznick Park. All the parades would come on, all the floats would come onto the ball field, and then the festivities would commence from there. Just imagine being stuck in that mermaid costume for probably a good couple hours. And I can hear psychically a bunch of people yelling at the screen who the names of these Queen candidates are. Look at that old bike. And there's the old the stands in the background. They didn't tear down until, oh wow, until they built Helen Zelznick Park. So turn of the 2000s, we got some tug of war going on. We never do tug of war anymore. All right, now we are moving to 1968, and I can tell because Spicer's Farm's still there, but the waterfront has now been cleared and paved. Look how close the highway is to the water, and of course now they've moved it half a kilometer up the hill. That's the original Selgar yard at Rothwell Point. And there's the Selgar Wharf, and then there you can see the erosion barrier. The CPR workshop is still all on the waterfront. The last building on the waterfront. That would be moved in April '69 to North Nakusp to become Nakusp Mobile Mechanics. Is this our New Denver parade? Nope. is the Kootenai Kilties from Trail, who came up every year to play in the parade. You can tell we're getting into the 60s now because that was a Yogi Bear costume. And a Beverly Hillbillies costume. Float. Yeah, and your BC Hydro float. So, it definitely tells you it's 68. The cenotaph is still located on the street. Oh, I just noticed Wilf Hewitt was the sponsor on that baseball uniform. And, of course, fundraising for the Rotary Children's Playground, which would be built pretty soon afterwards and is still around today in the park. A little jam session on the guitar, on the flute. There we go. 1963. Again, when it's on a loop like this, it's kind of hard to tell where one film begins and one film ends. So it looks like we just got a little bit of a sliver of 68 and then went into a 1963 parade. The hydro float again. The effort that must have taken to make that hand. Oh, the size of that hair. Was that Linda Henderson? Linda Williams? Before the big hair? And of course, Sharon would know, and she's watching, but she can't say anything to me. All right. More parade footage. This time, 67. All right, that was the Canada Centennial flag. Nakusp Pioneers. And that's the Boy Scouts escorting the Queen candidates. Little accordion jam session. Yeah, there's the Centennial logo, if you're wondering what that star design is. A lot of older buildings, you'll still see that logo on it. And that would be kin, so the kinsman. Yeah. Now we throw candy. Back then they just used to throw hay at you. Imagine being the person that had to just lie there on that hospital bed, length of the parade. Oh, we got the brownies. Oh, the Silverton Esso. Oh, wow. And, yeah, there you go. Green Acres, which was legitimately one of the top 5 television shows back then. And there's the old Overweighty sign up on that store sign. That's where the CIBC is now. And that Pepsi sign, Joy's Red and White, that's the general store now. All of those buildings on that one side of the block, with the exception of where the Aero and Anchor Pizza is now, are all the original buildings on that block. They were all built between the 20s and the 40s. So you'll notice there's quite a few historical plaques on that block now. That was the Marshalls and Crystal Spicer on those horses. And then the sea of parades. Oh, and there's the baseline on the ball field. Oh, again, that float must have taken hours. Ugh. The best thing about Super 8 is that when you play it back, it usually gets played back at about 1.25 speed. So everybody has these funny little super speed stilted walks. Okay, we've got some beautiful flower footage here. Some roses. We got about 15-20 minutes left here, folks. Again, I just want to apologize for the lack of a voice chat tonight. We finally got one going about... looks like a meeting finally got set up for me 5 minutes ago, but now we're a bit too far into it, unfortunately. So, next time, maybe, hopefully. That kid looks a bit nervous. Okay, this is the 68. This is 68 now. That would be Lexi Dunn, who's now Lexi Kiono, in the front of that Queen's Parade. There's a little parade float promoting trail. But I love that. Nabob coffee. So that would have been the year that Wilf Mays took over Joy's Red and White and turned it into an IGA. Again, that's the Journal Store building. And yes, we had skydivers come and make a land. One of these is Lauren Tascarl. I forget who the other skydiver is. But that would have been quite a novelty back then. It's still kind of a novelty now whenever you see somebody jump out of an airplane. But, yeah, it's definitely one way to make an entrance on July 1st. Iris Hascarl. And I forget who... Candy Obayashi was queen in 69. I forget who it is in 68. And then you can see the ball teams are already warming up in the background. July 1st baseball was a big tradition in Nakusp. It was usually Nakusp versus New Denver. Sometimes it was Nakusp versus Edgewood. But that's hardball, senior ball. as opposed to today where it would be slow pitch. Now we're back to the P&E, I believe, with some fireworks. All right, 1959. That would be the curling club float, as you can tell. Back when they literally actually had to use brooms. Yeah. That float did not age well. And, oh yes, and this is about the time we're about to launch into space. We already have the first couple of satellites, so people building rockets to the moon. Oh, there's the rocket again. In the back, that is the Nakusp Meat Market, which was ran by Orville Harper. You can see the SO sign, that's where Cut Right Meats is, and then that big black A-frame was the meat market. That later, soon after this, becomes the Rice Bowl restaurant. It tragically burned down in 1980 with and took the lives of 3 members of the Long family, quite tragically. And later on, that lot, after that building burned down, the Columbia Basin Trust office and the BDO Dunwoody office were built upon that. I just want to know how somebody could see out of that cake to actually steer it, because I couldn't see any eye holes in the front. Maybe it's just because I'm half Scottish, but the pipe band is usually one of my favorite things in the parade. The Cusp Variety Store, which was actually still around when I was a kid. That's the famous Kinsman Viking float, which they took around to many different parades all around the Northwest. There's that overweighty sign again. And of course the obligatory shot of the Queen float as it pulls into the rec grounds. Okay, so that's what the top of the curling float looks like. That's clever. I wonder how much they spent on making the costumes. That's a lot of gold lame. And it seems like every kid in town is dressed up for the parade. I couldn't imagine that now. Because, well, I couldn't imagine this many kids in town. Of course, this is the heart of the baby boom at this era. So, this was up until the baby boomers started having kids. This was the most kids that there had ever been in Nakusp at once. Nakusp would have been about 1,100 people at this time. Of course, today it's about 1,850. We'll just stay silent for that part. Was that Maddie Freeman? Who at that time would have been Maddie Gunterman? No, it's not. She would have been too young then. She'd only been about 10. Oh, the toy cars. Oh, the toy car merry-go-round. I definitely remember going on these when I was a kid. These were first installed in 1949. And if you go down to the park, somewhat close to about halfway between, if they're like a triangle between the playground, the gazebo, and the cenotaph, you can actually still see the footings for the merry-go-round. The cars were used up until the early 90s. They were handmade, wooden, and until they just got too old to use properly. But they still exist in storage somewhere in the bowels of the arena, I am told. So they need some work, but yes, it is still theoretically possible that one day some enterprising soul could get that toy car merry-go-round up and going again. We saw some Nakusp brass band footage a few seconds ago. The Nakusp brass band lasted in various incarnations between the 30s to through the 60s. There's that soda again. I haven't quite made out what brand that is. The label on the Summit Lake footage was a bit bigger. Yes, that is an authentic Nakusp baseball team hat. And believe it or not, where the ball fields are, where the campground is now, was the Nakusp golf course. It had 3 holes. Then it was expanded to 6 holes. And up until... And then, of course, in 1966, I believe, is when they moved onto the old Baird farm in Browse. But up until they expanded the Helen Zelsnick Park, you could still actually make out from aerial footage. Man, I wish I knew who these kids were. Just think, these are all kids that eventually my... These are all my parents' age, so they would have known everybody in this video. You could actually still see overhead where the actual holes on the golf course were up until about 2004 when they finished Helen Zelsnick Park. Alright, I think we've got one more piece of footage after this. Like I said, I said I had about 75 minutes of footage, and we're already at 8:09, so I think it's just one more. 60th anniversary of what? Wow. Now that is a cool float. When you cut down trees for float... Okay, this is New Denver. Because I think that's the orchard in the background of those houses. Yep. Okay, there we go. So I just had word from Cedra here. The cars in storage they weren't wooden. They're actually metal cars. They are actually metal cars. So thanks, Cedra. That's awesome. Oh, this is cool. All right. So we have some traditional Japanese dancing here. Ah. Those robes. and it's in the orchard too. You can tell by those houses. For those not familiar with New Denver, when I say the orchard, that's the south half of New Denver where the former Japanese Canadian internment camp was, and that's where the Nikkei Internment Memorial Center is today. So a lot of those houses would have been purpose-built. Wow, that's fantastic footage. Sorry if I'm a bit silent here, folks. I've just never actually, sat and just watched this before. And it does make me wonder what sort of footage I'm going to find in that Ueda collection. Oh, she even winked. Ugh. That one flower even had a bee on it pollinating. If you've never been to the Nikkei Internment Memorial Center, I highly recommend it. It's so important that we all educate ourselves on things like that. The atrocities that happen and the things that can grow out of such adversity and create a new community. So I'm guessing that, that's Denver Glacier, Mount Denver, across from New Denver. And of course, that would have been Slocan Lake that we saw. And a close-up on the glacier, which is not nearly as big nowadays. Oh, New Denver Garage. And Carpenter Creek, of course, there's a much newer bridge on Carpenter Creek these days. And of course, Carpenter Creek is what divides the north third of New Denver, north 2/3 of New Denver from the southern third. We're dancing. And again, very few people nowadays, even in the days of phones and having all the camera footage you could ever want right in your fingertips, a lot of people, we don't seem to get a lot of recent footage of parades. So it's amazing that somebody would actually take the concerted effort to go down there with a Super 8 camera or a Super 16 camera and take the time to capture this. because this is pretty amazing. I think. I hope you do too. Sorry about that. Mm-hmm. And again, if we had some names. Well, I guess that's it. Again, I thank you so much for joining us. It looks like we had a pretty decent turnout for what was, I think, all of a day or two's notice. So I thank you so much for coming. Apologies again about the lack of voice chat. By the time we got it figured out, it was a bit too late. But we'll definitely have that on the fingers crossed for next time. I think next time I'm going to do a more traditional slideshow. We got slideshows for years, and it's been a long time since a lot of you have seen our older slideshows, and some of our newer members and visitors may have not even have seen those newer slideshows. And I also want to say that we've got 2 giant tubs full of photos that the Nakusp District Museum have brought up to us. And there is some gold in those photos, I can tell you already. So I may just make a brand new slideshows out of those as well. And lots of exciting things come. It's going to be a very busy new year for the Historical Society. From my end, I can tell you that I have just started a brand new. We've just added a brand new museum archive software program to our computer, so we can finally get our records properly sorted out. Now that I've finished digitizing the bulk of the photo collection, I can really get going on sort of the more of the back end of things, and this is a project that'll take years. So that's just me. We've got a staff of amazing volunteers who spend their free time and dedicate their free time, and and they don't do it for the money. They do it out of the kindness of their hearts and their dedication to our community. As always, any donations are always appreciated. Usually when we do these slideshows in person, that's one of our big fundraisers, and obviously that's not a possibility at the moment, and probably won't be for a long time. So if you happen to have just a couple of dollars to send to our PayPal, we can continue. That helps us to make more books and get more photos online, and buy more recording equipment so we can put on more interactive events like this, and just keep the lights on in the building. Every little bit helps. I thank you so much, so much for coming out tonight, and we will see you, I believe, on the 18th of December for our next show, which will be a more traditional slideshow. Though, again, they're usually about the same length as this, about 75-80 minutes, and you'll see probably in excess of 160 photos in those slideshows. I miss you all. A large part of these shows is the interaction. So again, hopefully we'll have that voice chat going. And, thanks, Lauren. I see Lauren in the chat. I should actually, right before I'll go, I'll actually give Lauren Belinsky a little plug. He's got a couple of videos on his channel called The Narrow Arrows, and he's actually narrating them himself. He's taken some of his grandfather's footage from the time of flooding at Fokir and dam construction and moving houses, and he's actually made a short 11-minute film using that vintage footage, so you can actually see the old Fokir disappear and new Fokir come to life. So The Narrow Arrows, give them a follow, and if you go to our channel homepage and you look at you can also see some of the people we're now following. Folks like the Revelstoke Museum. Kathy English is putting so many videos up. It's amazing. Real Life out of Vernon. Jacques putting up a whole bunch of cool footage of not just around Vernon, but around BC and just cool things in general. Even the BC Ministry of Transportation has some cool old proto-street view footage of driving along highways in BC in the 60s, and I think you'll enjoy that. So that's it for me, everybody. Be sure to share the link if you thought this was worthwhile. Again, sorry about the lack of a chat tonight, but I'd say we did all right for our first time out. I don't know. But we'll see you again December 18th, 7 p.m., Friday night. We'll talk to you soon. For now,